And then once you find your way to non-dual, how do you then balance your way back into dual without getting sucked into symptoms, sucked into psychology, but you can stay aware of unity and aware of separate. Unity, separate. Once you do that, then there are the energy that moves up through your system actually has 5 different frequencies or 5 different behaviors that it uses to soothe your spinal cord, soothe your nervous system from fight, flight, freeze back into the parasympathetic, relaxed, digest, ease, flow state. So, hey y'all, Craig here with non-dual mechanics, subtle energy mechanics. Today, I want to talk specifically to you if you are stuck at home and you are trying to figure out what's going on. Got a message on one of my videos yesterday from somebody who's been, sounds like, as I remember, at home for 5 or 6 or 7 years, just plowing through the YouTube videos trying to find an answer. I think there's a whole bunch of you out there trying to find an answer to this strange thing because you've exhausted the medical options. All right. And so we're going to talk about that today. So this is for you if you were stuck at home. Many of you are healers or doctors also stuck at home because you know you've exhausted what you've been trained to do. And you're just holding out hope that there's something else. There's got to be another way to look at this. And there may actually be a glimmer of hope when you think back in your past. Maybe you've had some kind of psychedelic experience or what would be termed like a non-dual experience, a transcendent experience where you went up into this space, your nervous system produced this experience somehow where like, oh my gosh, I'm healed. Everything's fine. And then you came back down. And you're like, how do I get back there? And how do I take my body with me? Because it's not enough just to take your perception there. Because you will come back down. You will come back down into the state your body was when you left it, which might be sick or migraine or chronic fatigue or long COVID or dizziness or POTS or some autoimmune expression. Now I'm naming these specific diagnoses, and my disclaimer is I'm not a doctor. So I'm not licensed to diagnose and treat those named things. So what we are talking about here is how can we actually reimagine what this experience is that might give us a different map that actually may be more accurate than the one that's currently running our healthcare system. So, you know, transparency, I was a doctor for 10 years and now also a yoga instructor. And so most of what I'm going to talk about today, I've stolen from yoga because some of their maps are brilliant. And I think that they're also contorted a little bit, or maybe a lot, by many of today's instructors. And they haven't made their way, and the efficacy of some of these models haven't made their way into the standard medical world. It's just a matter of time, but they're not there yet. And how can you take some of this information and reconfigure your understanding of what's happening inside of you now so that you have maybe a glimmer of hope and can pull yourself out of this maybe life-threatening situation that you find yourself in right now. Okay. So there's a spiritual teacher that I've listened to for 30 something years named Ram Dass. And he has mentioned, I've also mentioned this in other of my videos, so you may have heard it before, but he talks about when you just start to get into the spiritual path, okay, that what are we looking for? We're looking for a state change, an out of the ordinary state. We're looking to move from the dualistic world, which seems very real for a long time in our lives. It seems very real. Like all of this, house is over there, I'm over here, and an over there and an over here scenario is dualistic. Like there's that and there's this and there's that. There's me and there's everything that's not me. And that's actually a critical part of this world. Okay. And that is everything that I can see, feel, hear, and touch in my five senses that builds and supports the dualistic point of view. Now, when people have sometimes a transcendent experience, they have this awakening thing. They're woke. They have this awakening thing where you wake up and you're like, whoa, the world's not what I thought it was. It's not dualistic. I am experiencing right now in this present moment that I am everything. So notice that that's actually kind of a dualistic view as well, because that's part of what our brain has to do with. It's like, wow, this is different compared to what than what is. So without going too far down that rabbit hole and trying to figure out what I'm saying, is that's where it starts, is that we come from a dualistic point of view, then something happens and we go, whoa, there's this other thing, there's this connection, there's this oneness, there's this unity. I'm not separate. I'm not all of these diagnoses. Somebody else commented on a video of mine the other day, said, you're not all of these labels. You are just the I am. You are everything, which is true. But there's nothing from over here in the pure non-dual state. Notice there's no connection here. There's nothing you can do to affect what happens when you come back down to duality, when you come back down to the sickness, to the exhaustion, to the migraines, to the long COVID, to the fatigue. Like, you're stuck over here. So after a while, if you do figure out through meditation or through mushrooms or through LSD or through MDMA how to get over into here, you'll be like, oh my God, thank God I'm back. I'm coming up for air. Finally, I'm back in my spiritual self where nothing matters. And then you take more and more and more. It's always going to come back. So this can't be the right model. There's got to be something else. Now, what Ram Dass did say that I loved was, this is the path. You go from here to here and then take one step back. Not both steps, but one step back. And this becomes the practice. So one, where am I? 2 to non-dual, 3 into this middle. Okay. And since that's a scribbly thing, I made another one. Now, I'm going to go back and forth between these two, because many of the healing approaches that I've come across are either here dualistic, like what I was trained to do when I was seeing patients. They're all here. And this is to help the body and psychology manage what's going on in the body. This over here is a completely different world where none of this exists. Right? Over in the non-dual. It's just a completely different world of freedom and unity, but we can't stay there. So now what? What was Ram Dass pointing out when he's talking about this one step back into this space in between? Okay. Now, if you've heard some of my other videos where I talk about attunement. Now, attunement, when it's done right, where you can find somebody that knows how, through their own meditative practices and where their nervous system has been shown how to balance this. This is a balancing exercise. And I'm pausing for a second just to make sure I don't get ahead of myself and I'm not leaving you behind. Okay, so this is the world of symptoms. This is the world of freedom. So how do we take some of this freedom and maybe influence the world of symptoms? Well, I'll go back and forth between these two. So I just went to this, I went to this healing technology thing last night. I went there. It was amazing. I laid down, I was on my back, and there was this light that was made by some guy in Austria, maybe some neuroscientist that had this near-death experience and realized, like, oh my gosh, I need to come up with some kind of technology to reproduce this near-death experience so people can go from here to here. And what I realized is that I went under that light. I went from here to here. I was watching this like DMT light flash and was like, man, this is really intense and amazing. And then what I realized as I woke up in the middle of the night tonight and this morning when I woke up was that nothing really fundamentally had changed. Yeah, nothing fundamentally had changed. So I kind of went from here back to here. So it became just a cool experience. But now when I look at the training that I got once I started to work in the yogic world, was the training that I got that seemed to be the key. Now, this is the part where you listen up. This was the key that seems to be the missing link for the people that have now come back and reported that said, wow, my long COVID is 80% better. My chronic fatigue is all but gone. My fibromyalgia is all but gone. My rheumatoid arthritis is all but gone. My migraines are all but gone. That wasn't me using some kind of dualistic approach to treat all of those named things that I just talked about. What is this other map, other model that actually allows you to go into, which one am I using? Go from where you are here in these symptoms and diagnoses into the non-dual, and then 1 foot back so that you now can experience, you can bring some of the freedom and ending of the fight, flight, freeze, these resistance patterns, the pathological patterns, and bring in some of these miracle results. And we'll talk about that right now. Okay. So what is unique about the dualistic, that I have a body? I have a body and I have a brain. I have the part of my brain and my nervous system that runs the fight, flight, freeze, panic scenario in the nervous system. And if we just look at that, the trauma response, the panic scenario, the part of your nervous system, part of your brain is stuck in the fight, flight, freeze response. And that is a dominant response that is, when it gets locked in place and stays in place every single day, that nervous system response will drive these diagnoses and the degeneration and the pathologies. So if we treat the diagnoses and the pathologies, we're kind of missing the thing that's creating them in the first place, which is the fight, flight, freeze, resistance, trauma pattern underneath it. So how do we then address the trauma pattern underneath it? Well, we know that there's a way to get to this non-dual world where you are in an experience inside where you feel free from that freak out, that pattern, that trauma. And if you can keep partially here and then come partially back into the world that has the body and the diagnoses and the fight, flight, freeze and the nervous system tension, and you can then go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth in an anatomically specific way. That's the key. In an anatomically specific way so that you can bring this non-dual, and here comes the yogic part. I'm going to write JB, and I'm going to write MB, and then I'm going to write UB. Okay. JB, MB, UB. All right. JB stands for, I'm going to say it wrong, but Jalandhara Bandha. Now, in the yogic world, that's something that happens in the neck. Now we're talking about dualistic anatomy here. And those of you that have chronic fatigue or dizziness or POTS or heart rate issues or thyroid issues, you have specific pathological problems that are coming from this area. Okay. And then you have dualistic medicines and therapies that will address this area. But there aren't any non-dual approaches yet that address this area, at least in the Western approach. So if there's a way that you can get into this non-dual state, the state of freedom, and find the physiology, find the movement patterns that you can then bring into the Jalandhara Bandha, into the what's called the Mula Bandha, which is the pelvis, the bottom of the spinal cord, which is the bottom of the brain. The brain is the dualistic thing. We're not going into full unity, I'm one with everything. We've gone into the dualistic, the non-dual, I'm one with everything. Now we came back into, I can feel part of my body. I can feel my anatomy, but I can also feel out, I can tune my nervous system to feel out to oneness, to spaciousness. And in that practice, It's kind of a meditative practice, which can be more easily accessed when you go there with somebody else. When the two of you go there, it's easier for nervous systems to stabilize there in at least pairs. Now, if you've heard some of my other videos, I talk about our human nervous system is relational in design. Relational in design, which means if we use our nervous system according to its design, it's going to function the best. Just like if you get in the car in a driver's seat, that's by design. It's going to drive the best when you were in the driver's seat. If you get in the back seat, you are trying to do something out of its design, which means it's not going to work very well. It'll just be a nice, cozy way to get out of the rain, but the car's not really going to do what it's meant to do. So if we find out how this thing's designed and interact with it according to its design, we'll get results that it's designed to get. Meaning we might actually be able to find our way out of these stuck pathological states that seem miraculous, but they're not miraculous. They're just according to our design, and our current medical model is actually not matching our design. It's only matching part of our design, the dualistic part. Okay, hopefully you're tracking here because I am talking to myself. So I'm not really aware whether or not you're tracking. So I will make up for that by making a whole bunch of videos and telling it in a bunch of different ways. Okay. So we go to the non-dual. And when you watch me do the work, and maybe I'll put some right here, video of me doing this work, where you'll see me somehow pointing my finger and somebody else is moving. Right? So what am I doing? I'm going from my body into the non-dual state where I can feel everything, including what it feels like to be in another body. Then part of me comes back and feels into my body. So I've gone into non-dual and now back 1 foot back into dual, into this space here where I have access to everything and to myself. And for those of you who want to work with trauma, called to work with trauma, I would encourage you, if you want to work with the body by its design and you are highly sensitive or empathic, that is the call. The highly sensitive or empathic means you have access to this non-dual. Now, when you want to train your highly sensitive or empathic nervous system, then you need to make it anatomically appropriate. You need to learn how energy from the non-dual accesses the dual. Energy from the non-dual accesses the dual in things called, or in a way called the kundalini awakening, or prana, or Holy Spirit, or faith healing. Lots of different names. But if you go and you look at videos of any of those names that I just mentioned, there's a striking similarity between people having a kundalini awakening and pranic healing or faith healing. There's some kind of energy that's coming through somebody. There's anatomy and physiology designed to move that energy through the brain specifically, which is blob up here, and the spinal cord all the way down. Right. And we actually have that on the side of all of our hospitals and our ambulances. It looks like a caduceus symbol, right? Remember what the caduceus symbol looks like? Like this, and like this. Okay. I think there's a second one here, but here's the body. Let's assume this is the spine. These are the arms standing like this. The energy from the non-dual state, when it gains access to the body, which means you've gone into non-dual and now you've taken one step back, means you're both unified with everything and you're separate. We can just do this right now as we're sitting here. You might feel a yawn start to come into your body. Look in and ask yourself, where's the yawn? Okay, where's the yawn? And just let that start coming. And the yawn is this non-dual energy looking to get into your body. And if you've gone too long on this planet in your purely dualistic self without having a practice to let non-dual energy access you, you've been starving. Your body's gotten sick because it's been starved, religiously starved, mystically starved, non-dually starved. We have a God-sized hole in our body, and it's basically calling us back by making us deathly ill. It needs us back, and we either need us back by killing our dualistic self, or we need to find a way to create space and do it in the way by our design so that the big spirit can get back in here and do its job in an anatomically and physiologically appropriate way, right? Which means the dualistic part of you, if you're a practitioner, that you have objective markers that you're tracking. Objective markers that you're tracking that are telling you that somehow you are attuning to your clients. And if you are a client looking for somebody, if this makes sense to you, and you're looking, you think, wow, this might actually work, then I would recommend finding somebody that is very practiced in this, that knows how to move into the non-dual state, move back into the dualistic state, and then actually help the yawn find its way into you, help kundalini find its way into you. They're not sending energy from them to you. That isn't by your design. The church, I just heard this said the other day, it was said brilliantly, that the foundational, the fundamental church is you, your heart, and aligned directly to spirit, aligned directly to God, aligned directly to Holy Ghost. It is not through a guru or a healer or a doctor or a yoga instructor. It doesn't need to come through us, right? That's a confused narrative, which will, because it's confused, it doesn't match your design, which means it isn't going to get great results. If you match your design, you're going to get these amazing results. If you don't get amazing results, it means you're not doing it right. Right? If you don't sit in the driver's seat, you know that you're in the driver's seat because you get amazing results. This thing starts going down the road. It really needs to be that simple. It takes getting from dual into non-dual is kind of an athletic event. It takes focus. It takes learning how to balance your awareness and splitting your awareness, like what's my posture doing, what's my breath doing, where is my sensation going, and you can learn to do this all on your own, and it will definitely take longer than doing it with somebody else that's a teacher of this stuff, but you can learn it just like learning to ride a bicycle. And I'd recommend doing some practices on this because, if you've had trauma, as many of us have, trauma as a child, not that you have to have had that, but trauma, especially complex PTSD, where you weren't attuned to as a kid. And if you weren't attuned, your nervous system wasn't attuned to as a kid by a loving care and skilled caregiver, then your nervous system will have a harder time keeping from being sick later on. It just creates a situation where that nervous system has a harder time maintaining a robust immune system. Said another way, if there isn't a healthy relational dynamic between your nervous system and others, your nervous system will be isolated, and the isolated nervous system is a nervous system that smokes about 15 cigarettes a day, drinks about 6 alcoholic drinks a day. That's the health trajectory. That's what happens when your nervous system isn't relationally attuned to others. And it happens to many of us. It happens in our culture. Let me look at the pinnacle of the medical system does not recognize the mystical mechanics of attunement. Now, I say mystical mechanics specifically because the mechanics are purely dualistic, anatomically appropriate. Mystical means what are we doing in this non-dual thing? How do I get into a unified state, an awakened state? And then apply mechanics to that. Now, when I was suggesting finding somebody to help you with this, you need to find somebody that you trust. Okay. Just like anybody else, any other, therapist or doctor or teacher or instructor, somebody that you trust, because from a dualistic point of view, there are boundaries. But by definition, from the non-dualistic point of view, there are no boundaries. You merge into unity. And merging into unity with somebody else means you better trust that person, whether it's your intimate significant other or your best friend. These are people that you trust. Now, this is a practice that you can learn to do with your intimate partner. In fact, that I think is by design, is that we are healthier when we are in some kind of committed relational situation. In the absence of that, you can find somebody that, like myself, that's my shameless plug, is that I do this work. And if you feel like, after you've watched enough of my videos, you can get the sense that you might trust me. But I'm also human. I'm also have my dark sides and my quirks and all that stuff. Just because we can do this non-dual stuff doesn't make us Yoda or Obi-Wan Kenobi, or by default trusting, with all the information in your life. We are still human. Okay. Okay, I know somewhere in here I said I was going to put a video demonstrating what I'm doing. I can't find it, so I'm just going to put it here. Okay, so this is an obvious physical, visual demonstration of what it looks like, and then if you can intuitively feel in your body what's happening here. This is the non-dual merging with the dual in that Venn diagram, where she's using my focus to help her access her own inner knowing, her own inner wisdom, her own prana, kundalini, chi, Holy Spirit. So it's not coming through me and over to her in some kind of manipulative sort of way. So she feels at home and moving to help it gain access to her. And because of our design, our nervous systems are relational. This energetic intelligence finds its way into us much more easily when two of us practice in a particular way, when there are two nervous systems engaging according to our design. Okay, so this is what the spine looks like as it starts to learn to move itself, to free itself from old belief patterns and old defensive patterns, and start to connect again to our unity. But if this all makes sense to you, I'd recommend finding somebody that does this type of work, at least to investigate how you feel and how you feel when you practice with this. And when you get it right, it should be dramatic and noticeable within the first day or two. It's not like taking, some kind of, or maybe, taking some kind of, medication where, yeah, it's going to work, but you're going to notice it after 6 weeks. Yeah, no. When you work with somebody that really is a skilled mystical mechanic, meaning they can go non-dual and step back into dual, they've been trained at how this yogic energy moves up and down through these Jalandhara Bandha, Mula Bandha, and then I didn't say what the U was, it's Uddiyana Bandha, which is, there's a place in between, right around the spinal cord in the middle. So if you look at the spinal cord itself, it needs to learn to go like this when the spinal cord is a dualistic structure, right? But when the spinal cord then has access to non-dual energy, it starts to do this. Then you look at the fish in a fish in a school, and they're doing this. The fish have this down. You look at the starlings, which are these cool black birds, and they fly in these murmurations, these magical looking murmurations. And there's something mystical going on there, right? So they are dualistic little birds, but they're moving in this non-dualistic, choreographed, flowy sort of way. And again, just to reiterate, then I'll be done. To reiterate is that it's not just a movement into non-dual, but it's more nuanced and precision requiring practice, is to be able to find that way into non-dual, which is a feat in and of itself. It's not that big, but it's a required feat. And then once you find your way to non-dual, how do you then balance your way back into dual without getting sucked into symptoms, sucked into psychology, but you can stay aware of unity and aware of separate. Unity, separate. Once you do that, then there are the energy that moves up through your system actually has 5 different frequencies or 5 different behaviors that it uses to soothe your spinal cord, soothe your nervous system from fight, flight, freeze back into the parasympathetic, relaxed, digest, ease, flow state. So there are mechanics that you will learn and you can bring from the non-dual back into the dual that then create this wave. It gets complex, but I wanted just to give you the overall view so that you may get a glimmer of hope that this makes sense intuitively. You can watch some of my other videos. I have one on yawn yoga. I'm in the process of making an inexpensive course that you can do at home in front of your computer, in front of your phone to practice with me. I'll be walking you through this yawn process. And just by watching me do this, sometimes the energetic attunement actually transmits across the video. I can't explain to you how, because most of this is fictional anyway, but somehow it works sometimes. Okay, so I think I'm at the end of my story for today. If this makes sense to you and you want to hear more, feel free to check out my other videos. If you like it, that's great, because then it'll get out to other people. Somehow the YouTube algorithm will be like, oh, somebody likes that. Maybe other people will. And so it sends it. If you have somebody that you know of that you think might like to hear this, maybe share that with them. That would be awesome. If you want to hear more of my stuff, of course, subscribe. There's an icon somewhere, and then there's a little bell somewhere, and you click on that, so you'll be notified when I make another video. So you don't have to do any of those things. All right. But just if it feels like it would serve where you want to go, of course, do that. I'm also on Instagram, not very much, but subtle energy mechanics there. And then my last shameless pitch coming. If this is something that you would like to talk to me about specifically, or know whether or not working with me might help, feel free to send me an email, which will be down here in the description. Okay. And then if you're watching this later on, there I may have a more refined process for that, where maybe there's like an intake questionnaire, and so it gives me more of an information about what's going on. So I can either schedule a conversation with you, or I can say, well, why don't you go check out this person? Sounds like this person, is right. Because for me, what feels the best for me is to have you find the shortest path between where you are and where it is that you want to go. And so oftentimes there will be a person that can help you get there, and I just want to find the right fit for who's that person, or what's that process, or what's that method, or what's that understanding. So whether it's me, somebody else, I just like to put the person in the right place. Okay, I'm done for today. Thanks for watching, y'all.